In 2015, there was this adjunct French instructor, Margaret Mary Vochko.
Oh, right. Yeah, that story is just...
It's tragic. She died virtually penniless. Like, she couldn't even afford to heat her own home while she was going through cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And she had taught at her university for, 25 years.
7.5 decades.
Yeah. Now, contrast that tragic reality with this other statistic. Between 1976 and 2018, American universities hired 164% more administrative managers.
That is, I mean, those two realities existing at the same time is wild.
Right. So welcome to the modern university, a place that, looks less like a sanctuary of learning and honestly a lot more like a ruthless Fortune 500 company aggressively managing its quarterly earnings.
Yeah, the dissonance between that, that ivy-covered cultural image we all hold on to and the current operational reality is staggering. We're looking at a fundamental shift in what an academic institution is actually designed to do.
And that tension is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We're exploring this really comprehensive research paper by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover, which tackles what he calls the corporatization crisis in American higher education.
Right.
So we're going to figure out how colleges started acting like giant corporations, the hidden mechanisms causing this shift, the massive human toll it takes, and, how some institutions are actually using evidence-based strategies to save their academic souls without going bankrupt.
What's really fascinating here is that Dr. Westover is very specific about the terminology. He is not talking about privatization.
Okay.
We're not discussing, the sale of public universities to private equity firms or anything like that.
Right.
Corporatization, in this context, is the wholesale adoption of business practices and market logic within traditional universities.
I see.
So it's treating students strictly as customers, viewing academic departments purely as cost centers, and focusing obsessively on quantifiable short-term metrics over, long-term intellectual development.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the numbers illustrating this shift, they paint a very clear picture. We mentioned that 164% growth in administrative positions.
Yeah.
Over that exact same period, full-time faculty grew by only 92%, while student enrollment grew 78%. I mean, it sounds like a hospital hiring 3 times as many billing managers and marketing directors, but freezing the hiring of actual doctors.
That hospital analogy actually captures the structural imbalance perfectly, because it leads to this concept that scholar Benjamin Ginsberg coined, which Westover highlights in the paper, called the all-administrative university.
The all-administrative university.
Exactly. This phenomenon happens when a rapidly multiplying class of professional managers eventually displaces the actual practitioners, so the faculty,
Right.
from the institutional decision-making process.
So the people who have never set foot in a classroom to teach are the ones deciding the future of the classroom?
Exactly. And that completely transforms the institutional identity. Because when an administration disconnected from the educational process makes all the strategic decisions, well, the strategy naturally detaches from educational consideration.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The institution starts optimizing for, operational efficiency and revenue generation rather than discovery, research, and learning.
So the immediate question that comes to mind here is, why? I mean, universities didn't just wake up one morning and greedily decide to act like ruthless corporate monopolies.
No, not at all.
Westover's research outlines the sort of perfect storm of financial pressures that effectively forced their hands over the last few decades. Let's trace the money, starting with state disinvestment.
Right, the funding drop.
Yeah, from 1990 to 2020, state public funding dropped by 37% per student when you adjust for inflation. The paper points out this really stark reality. Public schools basically went from being genuinely state-supported to merely being state-located.
Yeah, state-located. The state effectively pulled the financial safety net away, which shifted higher education from being viewed as a public good to being treated as a private individual investment.
Wow.
And so to keep the lights on, universities had to frantically replace that lost public funding with massive increases in tuition revenue and entrepreneurial income.
Which triggers the second part of the storm, right? The student debt crisis. Because universities had to constantly hike tuition just to survive, student debt reached a staggering $1.7 trillion by 2023.
Unbelievable number.
It's massive. So students and their parents are understandably in a panic. They're taking out mortgages basically for a bachelor's degree, so they are demanding definitive proof of a return on investment and ROI.
Yeah, they want a guarantee.
Right, a guarantee that this huge debt burden is going to lead directly to a high-paying job the moment they graduate.
And that intense financial pressure
Mm.
reduces the entire concept of higher education to a purely vocational transaction.
Mhm.
The focus narrows from developing a well-rounded citizen to basically printing a credential that can be immediately monetized.
Yeah, and you add the enrollment cliff to that mix, and the panic really makes
A little
sense.
demographic lift, yeah.
Right. Projections show a 15% drop in traditional college-age students coming between 2025 and 2029, simply because birth rates declined during the 2008 recession.
Exactly.
So we have less state money, students demanding strict vocational ROI, and a rapidly shrinking pool of paying customers. It's a cutthroat environment. But I have to offer a pushback here.
Sure.
I completely get the financial squeeze. If state funding drops, these schools have to survive. But how does focusing on marketability and getting a job actually hurt the student's education? I mean, shouldn't a college actively want its graduates to be employable?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the danger lies in the difference between short-term job training and long-term intellectual adaptability. When universities panic and optimize strictly for short-term earnings to prove their ROI to anxious parents, they start gutting academic programs that don't sound immediately like corporate job titles.
Ah, I see.
The liberal arts have been absolutely crushed by this dynamic. The data in the text shows humanities majors dropped by roughly 30% between 2012 and 2020. Whole philosophy, history, and language departments have been completely eliminated.
Oh, 30%.
Yeah. But the profound irony is found in long-term economic data. Studies from organizations like the Pew Research Center show that liberal arts graduates actually achieve equal or greater earnings by mid-career compared to their peers in highly specialized, professionally oriented majors.
Wait, really? The philosophy majors actually catch up to the accounting majors?
They often surpass them over a 20-year horizon
That's fascinating.
because liberal arts programs teach critical thinking, complex communication, ethical reasoning, and the ability to synthesize diverse information. Basically, adaptability across rapidly changing contexts.
Right, because industries change.
Exactly. Those are the exact durable skills major employers consistently say they desperately need but cannot find.
Mm.
A highly specific vocational degree might secure that first entry-level job, but when that entire industry gets disrupted by a new technology 10 years later, the adaptable thinker is the one who pivots and survives.
Right, the one who knows how to learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the corporatized university model completely ignores that long-term adaptability because the administration is entirely focused on the short-term metric of initial job placement rates.
So they're optimizing for a timeline that is far too short, entirely missing the actual value of the education.
Exactly.
And when institutions panic over that shrinking pool of tuition dollars and demand for short-term metrics, they start looking for the fastest ways to cut operating costs. And the easiest target on a corporate spreadsheet is always labor.
All these labor.
The data Westover presents on who actually bears the brunt of those cuts on a daily basis it's deeply troubling. By 2021, 68% of all instructional staff at universities were contingent, meaning adjunct professors. These are highly qualified experts with advanced degrees suffering from what the research terms pervasive precarity.
The modern university basically relies on a systemic casualization of academic labor.
Here's where it gets really interesting, or maybe just incredibly bleak. It's like the gig economy has completely invaded the ivory tower. They've essentially created Uber for professors.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
I mean, an adjunct is paid roughly $2,700 to $3,500 per course. That translates to maybe $20,000 to $25,000 a year for someone teaching a full, exhausting load, often commuting between multiple different campuses just to piece together a living.
And getting zero benefits.
Right. No health benefits, no retirement contributions, and absolutely no job security beyond the current 15-week semester.
It's terrible.
And 31% of adjunct faculty rely on public assistance programs just to survive. The paper also notes that Black and female faculty are disproportionately overrepresented in these highly precarious roles.
And you know the story of Margaret Mary Varchko that you opened with, that is the inevitable, tragic endpoint of treating educators as disposable independent contractors.
Yeah.
Her story catalyzed national attention in 2015. But as Westover points out, the corporatized system is so entrenched that meaningful systemic improvements simply haven't followed.
And you know what the craziest part of treating professors like gig workers is?
What's that?
The math doesn't even work. The paper points out that losing or firing a faculty member actually costs an institution between $200,000 to $400,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not just the cost of a new hiring search, it's the lost momentum on research grants, the disruption to student advising, the administrative hours drained by running search committees, and just the total loss of institutional memory. It's the definition of being penny wise and pound foolish.
Absolutely. And that gig economy mindset bleeds directly into the day-to-day student experience, which just compounds the damage. Well, because tuition has risen 180% above inflation since 1980, just to cover those institutional shortfalls, students are under immense financial pressure.
Right.
Currently, 40% of undergraduates work more than 30 hours a week while actively taking classes,
That's a full-time job.
basically.
Yeah.
And the research shows this level of outside work actively diminishes graduation rates and heavily damages learning outcomes.
Well, yeah.
I mean, a student simply cannot deeply engage with complex theoretical material when they are sleep-deprived, stressed, and working a near full-time job just to pay for the privilege of sitting in the lecture hall.
It's impossible. And the pressure on both sides of the lectern brings us to this devastating sociological concept Westover highlights called academic enemy.
Yes, academic enemy. It describes a complete breakdown of shared norms, mutual expectations, and collective purpose within a community.
Okay.
In a healthy university, there is a shared pursuit of knowledge. But when professors know they're treated as disposable gig workers, their incentive to mentor students or engage in campus life just evaporates.
Yeah, why would they?
Right. And simultaneously, when students view their massive tuition as a purely transactional purchase of a credential, their incentive to struggle through difficult material disappears. So the entire social and intellectual fabric of the university just falls apart.
And that customer service mindset introduces a fatal flaw to the educational process because the corporate mantra dictates that the customer is always right.
Yes. Treating the student as a customer actively ruins the product being sold.
Right.
If end-of-semester customer satisfaction surveys are the primary metric determining whether an adjunct professor gets hired back the next semester, you create massive systemic pressure for grade inflation.
Oh, of course. You can't fail the customer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
An educator cannot assign rigorous, deeply challenging work if it makes the customer unhappy.
Yeah.
You cannot push a student far out of their comfort zone, which is where actual learning happens,
Yeah.
if your ability to pay your rent relies on their positive review of your customer service.
It entirely hollows out the actual value of the degree. So we're left with bloated administrative bureaucracies, impoverished professors, exhausted students, and a devalued educational product.
It's pretty bleak.
It is. The corporatization crisis is very real. But this deep dive isn't just about identifying the damage. Let's examine the counter movement.
Yes, the solutions.
Right. Westover's paper details real-world case studies of institutions that are fighting back, balancing their books, surviving the financial storm, and retaining their academic souls.
And these examples are crucial because they provide empirical evidence that financial sustainability does not inherently require exploiting academic labor or abandoning the core educational mission.
Purdue University is a phenomenal starting point here. Their approach sounds almost impossible given the current climate. They froze tuition, keeping it under $10,000 a year for Indiana residents for 14 consecutive years.
That is unheard of.
And that freeze extends all the way up to 2027. Crucially, they manage this massive freeze while simultaneously giving their faculty 2 to 2.5% annual raises and keeping their full-time workforce intact. They didn't balance the budget by firing the tenured professors and replacing them with adjuncts?
No, they didn't. They achieved this through incredibly disciplined strategic program prioritization and genuine operational efficiencies.
What does that look like?
Well, instead of individual departments running their own redundant software systems or managing parallel procurement processes, Purdue centralized and standardized those massive operational contracts.
Ah, okay.
They took the millions saved from those back-end corporate efficiencies and reallocated them directly into protecting the academic core.
That's smart.
Furthermore, by becoming such an attractive, highly affordable option, they massively grew their enrollment volume, which offset the frozen tuition rate.
Right. Make it affordable and more people come.
Exactly. They viewed their secure, fairly compensated faculty as the primary driver of their long-term value rather than a short-term cost center to be minimized.
Now, Arizona State University, or ASU, offers a different model for survival. Under President Michael Crow, ASU exploded in size, growing from roughly 57,000 students to over 150,000.
Huge growth.
Huge. And traditional elite universities, they define their prestige by their exclusivity, by how many thousands of applicants they reject. But ASU embraced the market realities by doing the exact opposite.
Right.
They publicly stated they would judge their institutional success by whom we include and how they succeed. And despite that massive, unprecedented scale, they maintained huge investments in full-time, secure faculty.
Yeah, because ASU realized that to handle that scale and solve complex modern problems, the traditional isolated academic departments were inefficient.
Okay.
So they effectively collapsed traditional departmental silos.
Yeah.
Instead of keeping biologists, engineers, and sociologists locked in separate buildings competing for funds, they created problem-focused interdisciplinary institutes, like an Institute for Sustainability. Yeah, they proved that massive scale and broad public access do not mandate a drop in academic quality, provided the institution actively invests in the educators doing the heavy lifting.
So ASU proved you can scale a university without losing quality. But what happens when a massive student body starts slipping through the cracks?
That requires a totally different tool.
Right, which Georgia State University found in predictive analytics. They used corporate big data to boost their graduation rates by an astonishing 23 percentage points. But the secret sauce wasn't just buying an expensive software algorithm, it was who actually controlled the dashboard.
Yes. In a typical corporatized model, predictive analytics are imposed top-down by administrators to track metrics and punish underperforming departments.
Like Big Brother.
Exactly. But at Georgia State, the faculty themselves designed and control the interventions.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, a faculty member could log into the dashboard on a Tuesday afternoon, see that a first-generation student had just missed registration for a critical prerequisite course, and intervene that exact same day.
Wow, before it's too late.
Right. They use the data to proactively solve financial emergencies or advising errors before the student failed out a year later. It's a powerful demonstration that data-driven accountability and shared faculty governance can coexist beautifully.
Then there are the small liberal arts colleges, the ones most vulnerable to the enrollment cliff. Sweetbriar College came back from the brink of total closure in 2015. The board of directors actually voted to shut the school down.
Right, it was over.
But the alumni revolted, raised millions in emergency funds, and the administration completely restructured the institution around a crystal-clear, distinct mission: 21st century women's leadership. Similarly, Colby College managed to double its endowment to $1 billion. And they didn't do this by frantically trying to offer every generic vocational degree under the sun. They did it by heavily and unapologetically articulating the distinct, irreplaceable value of a rigorous liberal arts education.
Yes.
But are these schools just unicorns with massive advantages, or is there an actual reproducible formula here? Because Purdue freezing tuition for 14 years sounds like absolute magic.
This raises an important question. And the answer is that it isn't magic, and they aren't unicorns. What unites every single one of these success stories is intense strategic clarity and a structural concept called distributed leadership.
Distributed leadership.
Right. Corporatization centralizes all decision-making power in a small administrative cadre at the very top. These successful, resilient universities did the exact opposite.
Could you break down what distributed leadership actually looks like in practice?
Sure. Instead of a vice president of finance sitting in a disconnected office deciding which biology classes get cut based entirely on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Distributed leadership means the biology professors and the history professors are actively sitting on the budget committee.
Oh, I see.
They have real voting power. It treats the faculty like a board of directors rather than a fleet of disposable gig workers. When the actual experts are empowered as partners in governance, the institution becomes incredibly resilient. The administration and the faculty figure out how to navigate the brutal market realities together, ensuring that budget cuts never accidentally amputate the academic soul of the school.
Bringing the experts back into the boardroom,
Exactly.
that transitions perfectly to the final piece of the puzzle, the future. How do we take these specific lessons and apply them to the broader crisis in higher education? Westover argues that the ultimate solution requires recalibrating the psychological contract of the university.
Yes. For decades, there was an implicit, deeply understood trade-off in academia. Faculty accepted moderate pay in exchange for intellectual freedom, job security, and professional autonomy.
Right.
In turn, students accepted rigorous, sometimes deeply uncomfortable intellectual challenges in exchange for transformative personal growth.
Okay.
But the corporate model shattered that contract. It replaced academic security with gig worker precarity, and it replaced intellectual transformation with transactional consumer credentialing.
So to fix the system, Westover suggests moving away from corporate accountability, which strictly measures proxies, like how fast someone gets a degree or their first-year salary, and moving toward purpose-driven accountability.
Yes.
This means actually measuring genuine learning outcomes, evaluating a graduate's civic participation, and tracking true long-term social mobility. So what does this all mean for the person listening to this deep dive right now? Why should a parent preparing to pay tuition, or an investor looking to hire, or just a curious citizen care if the local university is structured like a Fortune 500 company?
Because universities are critical load-bearing infrastructure for our society.
Hmm.
They're not merely job training centers meant to churn out compliant entry-level workers. They are engines for democratic resilience and social mobility.
Yeah.
They produce the adaptable, critical thinkers who are capable of solving incredibly complex, unprecedented problems. If every university becomes a mere credential factory, optimizing exclusively for the cheapest possible delivery of the most basic vocational skills, society as a whole loses its problem solvers.
It comes back to that long-term adaptability. We need people who know how to think, not just people who know how to execute a pre-written corporate manual.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Think about the massive, complex societal problems we're facing at this very moment. Accelerating climate change, the murky ethics of artificial intelligence, future global pandemics.
Huge issues, right?
Those existential crises cannot be solved by people trained only to maximize quarterly profits or execute a narrow technical task.
No, they can't.
They require long-term, interdisciplinary, highly creative, and often deeply unprofitable thinking.
Yeah.
That is the exact kind of thinking that the liberal arts and secure, well-supported faculty currently foster. If universities completely surrender to the corporate model, optimizing only for near-term vocational outcomes, who is going to do that deep, world-saving thinking?
It is a terrifying question to consider.
It is. And it leads to a profound historical irony. If the corporate market successfully dismantles the academic independence and intellectual rigor of the traditional university, will that same corporate market eventually be forced to spend billions reinventing the ivy-covered sanctuary from scratch just to produce the visionary thinkers it desperately needs to survive the next century?
Wow. We walked into the hospital expecting a doctor to heal us, and we found an accountant trying to minimize our stay.
Exactly.
If we don't protect the doctors and empower the professors, we might just find out what happens when the entire societal system gets sick. There is a massive amount to think about there. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.